I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. Did you? I just knew I wanted to be around decent people. You know, people who were fun, friendly. See, Generation X, we're the way we are due to how we were raised. Our coaches were allowed to be hard on us. Our parents had no idea where we were because they were too busy doing them. It's where all the great 80s one-liners came of parenting. Stop crying or we'll give you something to cry about. You think that hurts? You should see what I did to your father when he was a kid. You know, just the normal trauma. From childhood, we're programmed by parents, society, our friends, the systems around us, our religions. Some parents raise their kids to be submissive, obedient, molded to fit the system. Others raise them to be confident and to fight it. We are at a crossroads like we've never been before. This division is not helping. The choice is being made right now. And we are not just spectators. We are the players in this game of history. Future isn't written yet. My vision for this broadcast was to bring more voices into the conversation, to ask hard questions, and to find out together how this plays out.
For people to take their dogs to the park. Shocking.
If you're one of those special individuals who's about finding a solution to all this, follow this and subscribe. Good evening. Good Friday evening. It's not Good Friday, but hey, Good Friday. Lot happening in the world, as usual. Going to be some fun stuff to talk about tonight, and we actually have one viewer right now. I'm ecstatic. Really, I'm not sure whether to look at this like the fact that I am being like at some of the largest companies in the world, Google, Facebook, Instagram, which I guess is Facebook, but to be considered so important that the company decides to take measures to make sure you can't win, it certainly does make you feel important, doesn't it? I think it does. You can't have regrets for the bad things that happen to you. They're just as important as the good things. I've learned way more from my mistakes than I have from my success. I said Hollywood would die the day I pulled out of town.
We're good. Seatbelts.
We're going to find out just how mentally healthy this country is over these next few years. Maybe a few months. Shit. I just don't think there's time in life to hold a grudge. You got to get through it, move through it, figure it out, look for something fun to do. But don't ever miss an opportunity to call someone out for being a dick. I wasn't the one who started this bullshit, but I will do what it takes to end it. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. So the first thing I just want to kick into tonight, we had a SpaceX launch today. I just think SpaceX launches are just amazing. Let's just take a peek here real quick at the launch. So what did this take? A couple weeks to get ready? Remember how long it used to take NASA to get these things ready? I mean, we literally can send people to space now on a week's notice. That's how reusable this has turned. Let's get up to the launch here. Launch is the best part. Oh, did it go? Oh, shoot. 48 seconds. I mean, just think about this. Like that's my ultimate goal. This going into space. Yes, I would go to Mars. If my kids are grown and everybody's taken care of and happy, and they're giving away or trying to fill seats on this trip to Mars, I'm in. I'm fully in. I couldn't think of anything more fun than living every day with a new adventure. Who cares if it's isolated? We've all been isolated for the past 6 years. Isolation isn't going to cause any problems. But just think about this for a second. We are launching, 4 people to space right there? I just think this is amazing. And the faster we can pull together all of this divisive crap where nobody's talking and everybody's still slandering and accusing and just literally calling people names non-stop. I mean, I see why we're doing it. I do. Being, tonight's topic, which is going to be, I think I've covered this a little bit before, but it's going to be kind of how we come to bring on or take on our political views. What makes us choose to fight for something as hard as we fight? Because what I remember about politics is not really many people paid attention. But look at this. Just boom, into space. Fast forward here a little bit. Now we've got Dragon going on to the space station. Oh my God, look at that. You can see where it blasted off right there. And the views that we get to see now, I mean, this stuff is so amazing. This is what makes you should just be so excited to get up every day for like the next 10 years. They are going to be so much fun. And let's look at the landing. Oh. And it seems like these landings now are just clockwork. Like I would literally feel safe getting on one of these Falcon 9s prepped to go to space. What's it doing? Oh yeah. So check this thing. Just every time I see it, I know you've probably seen this 1,000 times, but this is still amazing every time I watch it. Legs down. Bam. Right in the center. And thank you very much. Stuck the landing. I mean, just how can you not be excited about that? I just don't understand anybody who can't be excited about the potential of going to space. And I know Elon is causing people a lot of pain, a lot of misery. I'm sure Trump loves it because Trump gets to kind of take a break. He gets to take a back seat. He gets to do all this dirty work, or Elon's doing all the dirty work, while Trump kind of takes a back seat and just goes about the daily business. Not a lot happened this week. There's some markets were up big today. Okay, we saw a pretty significant rebound, a little over 2% on all the majors. Dow was, excuse me, my voice is going out on me here. Maybe at 8 o'clock is not the best time to do this. But it'll be interesting to see if this holds. I don't think it's possible. What we talked about on last night's show a little bit about the economic stimulus, the money that we knew about, and then there's the money that we didn't know about. Both of those, all money is going to stimulate the markets. Okay? Bitcoin and the markets used to be totally uncorrelated. Now they're correlated and then they're uncorrelated. So I have my theories as to what cash and what stimulus is still working for Bitcoin. But this is going to have to unwind, folks. It's going to unwind. There is going to be consequences for what essentially took place, which was the overstimulus of an economy that probably should have slowed down. I mean, it makes sense. 2020, 21, 22, when I wasn't sure about the election, I had my doubts about the outcome of the election and seeing what happened overnight. And I mean, it doesn't take a forward thinker, massive critical thinker to see something weird went on that year, especially if you've been watching elections, which usually election night is kind of a fun night. Everybody watches the vote and, they take a look at it, see what happens, and it's a night. We did that night too. But something weird happened. It didn't feel right. And every piece of me was thinking, God, is there going to, like, could our government be so corrupt that they are taking control of this, doing this, pulling all these levers, hurting people, suppressing voices? I didn't believe, I really didn't want to believe it. I didn't. But as I paid closer and closer attention, from about 2008, about 2019 until now, I've been paying acute attention to Bitcoin, the S&P 500, the indexes, a few stocks, just to see how things correlate. And boy, did I find out some absolutely crazy stuff. I mean, I can't even, I probably shouldn't go into that now. Sorry, I needed to grab a quick drink. Didn't really do much good. But, we got to keep talking, though. This is going to keep coming. This is going to keep happening. I'm just going to keep putting my voice. Oh, Shiza Manelli. What's going on here? I got no audio. I got nothing. Voice. Why is voice not coming in at all? Oh my God. Nothing? Hello? I don't get it. Check. Is voice coming in? No, voice is coming in. Okay. Hopefully we've had voice this whole time. I just looked at my screen here and it looked like nothing was going out. Sorry. Total freak out. Didn't want to have another audio mistake. I've actually done an entire broadcast. I think it was number 4 or 5. No audio the whole time. But tonight I wanted to go into real quickly how I developed my political beliefs. What even carved me into being conservative or being a Democrat, or how did I had to really think about this for a long time. And I'll be honest with you, I've been thinking about it since I got out of high school. And I didn't start thinking about it, and maybe some of you can relate to this, but I didn't start thinking about it until I turned 18 and it was my turn to start voting. So I said, okay, well, I'm 18. I can go buy cigarettes, go to the strip club, and I can vote now. I'm going to be darn sure that I'm going to do all 3. Why not? It's something new. So I started thinking. The first thing that kind of came to my mind was, I'm pretty sure my grandparents on my dad's side, which I probably spent the most time with, I'm pretty sure they would be conservative. I remember them being all, happy about Reagan and Reagan this and Reagan's kick ass. And I do think Reagan was pretty kick ass, but I just remember thinking, God, do I really associate myself with conservatives, with my grandparents, with, they were very Christian. They used all the same standard Christian shaming tactics. If you didn't go to church, you were shamed. If you didn't know your scriptures, you were shamed. If you didn't want to pray, you were shamed. I did not like being around most of them because the conversation wasn't easy. As a kid, you were kind of on your toes all the time. You were just kind of hoping Grandpa didn't have one of his, are you looking at me? Don't talk back to me. It was just, I didn't really associate with that. So, and I remember in the 80s or, in the early 90s, when I turned 18, I didn't really feel like gay marriage or gay couples could really be gay. I remember thinking there really shouldn't be all of this anti-gay stuff. People should be able to come out and be gay if they want to be gay. So that was kind of one of the things that led me to believe that I was more liberal when it came to some social dynamics. And as it turns out, I lived in a pretty blue state, Washington State, Seattle, King County, very blue, very democratic. But I think for different reasons, I don't know, things have changed a lot, and wrapping my mind around it is not easy at all. In fact, well, we'll talk about that. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I have a tendency to do that. So that year, it was Ross Perot. It was Ross Perot, George Bush, Bill Clinton. And I was kind of excited to vote because I was really excited about this Ross Perot dude. This little short, elvish looking man, he had some really smart, good ideas for what I thought could be implemented in the federal government. Like, hey, let's lean this thing up. Let's make it run good. Let's make it run efficiently. We can't be running deficits. We can't waste our money. We have to be fiscally responsible. That's been my main, I think, driver for what makes me a conservative is I've always been fiscally conservative. I think people should be responsible with money. If you're responsible with money, then you're typically responsible with other things in your life. I don't know. That could be true, may or may not. But that's just the way I look at it. God, I hope my voice is going to make it through this tonight. Laga, laga, laga. So it turned out I voted for Ross Perot. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but remember, Ross Perot got messed with. They tried to boot him out of the election. They said, he's going to split a vote. He's going to take votes from one or maybe the other. It's the same reason we saw RFK booted. Why we saw Bernie booted. They were trying to install Hillary. Now, coming into the 2016 election, where Trump got elected for his first term, again, I was not paying attention to anything political. I wasn't even in the investment business anymore. I mean, I was on my way out of the investment business. So I didn't really even feel like I had to pay close attention because typically when I travel and the travels that I did do in the investment business, you have to have a pretty good grasp on markets and global policy and trade and stock prices. And you just have to be able to speak the lingo with everybody from your Primerica financial services advisor all the way to your, registered investment advisor, hedge fund manager, private equity person. You just have to be prepared. So you want to make sure you know what's going on. But at this time I wasn't. But I still was always like, let's see. Hillary, Trump. Well, I think Trump would make it way better. Like, for one, it'd make it interesting. And I kind of poked around and forgot that just about everybody that I had been friends with for 30 years must have been a lifelong Democrat. I mean, that only explains my cancellation. It only explains all the people that I've never had a problem with in my life, just not returning calls or messages or just essentially erasing me from existence in my own hometown. That's the only thing I can think is it has to be political. Well, then kind of over these last, 4 years especially, I've really started to drill down into this because, if it took me years to really even identify, what about the Republican Party I correlate with, or what about the if I had to think about that, did everybody? Or when you put the pieces together, was it indoctrinated into you? See, because I think most people, most families, it's kind of indoctrinated. Maybe politics aren't talked about openly, widely, because they weren't. When I was a kid, or even, from 1988, let's say, 87, 88, through 2015, politics was never really openly discussed. It was here and there. My business partner was highly political. Well, I figured out why he was later in life, but he always had a stance on, something he's fighting for. And we would debate all the time and be able to have disagreements. And there was never any just like shutting people off. There was not this cancellation of people, like you can't speak to them anymore, or a constant shaming. And what I've always focused on, always, with every bit of communication skill that I've gained in my life, is de-escalation. I've always been told I'd be a good politician because I'm always just facilitating communication, de-escalating a conflict, helping people see past an emotional response by just calmly talking. It was something that my grandma kind of ingrained in me and taught me when I was little. I mean, my grandma would sit and she made recordings of these conversations she'd have with me. I never wanted to go to bed. So when I was 2 and 3 years old, all she could think of doing was sitting and just talking to me. And she did it for hours. And I could hold a conversation with her for hours. I mean, it's crazy. Listening to some of these conversations now at 50 years old, it's because I actually remember being in the room with her, looking at the organ and looking at like the keys on the organ while I'm talking to her. I literally have a vivid memory of speaking the words that I heard on a tape when I was 3 years old. It's really crazy. That was kind of the only thing I got from my grandma, because my aunt took everything else. She stole everything else and made me, being a conservative, Trump supporter, what have you, as the reason why she just took all of it and didn't want to talk. Or she would talk. She just wouldn't talk sense. She would just talk a little bit. And then that was it. She'd give you only what she was going to give you, although she would sit there and listen to you as long as you wanted. It's very frustrating. So I think, here's my hypothesis when this is all said and done. I hope you understand that, at least from my perspective, I do not consider myself a Republican or even a Trump supporter, definitely not MAGA. What I always was, and I think there's a lot more people that are in my camp. So if you hear this message, just I'm hoping to help people understand what you might be dealing with. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a MAGA. I always support, now listen to this carefully. I always support the candidate that makes the most sense to me. Whether that's a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't matter. I don't differentiate. Or I didn't until like these last 4 years when we've seen happen what happened. You got to start to wonder, what really makes a Democrat a Democrat? Now, I know a lot of people that I grew up with, a lot of them worked in unions, longshoremen, construction, welders, whatever. A lot of unions have a tendency to go Democrat. That's been a traditional place. A lot of your Kennedy Democrats. But I don't necessarily think those Democrats are still Democrats. Are, like I say, like, I don't think those are the Democrats that are fighting for everything that's being fought for right now and what's happening. And I think that alone is the reason that all this divisiveness and this separation and this chaos and everything that's been happening, I think that's why It's continuing. I do. You can't have regrets for the bad things that happen to you. They're just as important as the good things. I've learned way more from my mistakes than I have from my success. I said Hollywood would die the day I pulled out of town.
We're good. You got your seatbelt on? Seatbelts? Seatbelts!
We're going to find out just how mentally healthy this country is over these next few years. Maybe few months. Shit. I just don't think there's time in life to hold a grudge. You got to get through it, move through it, figure it out, look for something fun to do. But don't ever miss an opportunity to call someone out for being a dick. I wasn't the one who started this bullshit, but I will do what it takes to end it. Welcome to the Ackerman Alliance Daily Show, your daily dose of things you need to know, and probably some things you don't. Okay, so we all get our affiliations in different ways. We all look up to different people. We all have different beliefs. But if you are fighting for something to the death, no going back, because you think you have the absolute purest understanding of what really is going on, and you know for a fact you can identify the difference between somebody who's lying and somebody who's not lying, then great. Keep fighting for what you're fighting for. But if you have not ever talked to the opposition or had a conversation with somebody that maybe doesn't believe the things you believe, if you continue to only hear what's coming from the echo chamber or listen to the people who've tried, that's the other thing. So many people have tried to shame me into believing a certain way. They did it when I was a kid and my grandparents used church as a weapon, and now they're doing it again, trying to belittle and shame and criticize. And I've always been about pushing people up and encouraging and like, hey, let's have more fun and let's push people up and be nice and not be critical. Nobody likes critical. Do they? I don't like critical. Who likes to be criticized? Anybody? I know people today that are so afraid of being criticized or hear anything critical that it paralyzes them. Absolute paralyzation. My God. I guess that's one thing I can thank my mom for. She was so critical and so not nice. I mean, you had to love her. She was my mom. I did love her. But God, she'd make you feel little. And you just would want to not be around her. You'd want to go and do other things. And that is what leads me to my next little story here for you guys. So another thing that I think was good for me in just forming my own political affiliations, they weren't handed down. They weren't taught. I wasn't in a family that said, you must vote this way. I got out a lot. Ever since I was 8 years old, I was kind of free to roam for hours. I mean, mom was a drinker. Anything after 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she didn't really remember anyways. So I had a little Honda 50 motorcycle. I'd be off in the woods for hours, or I'd have an aluminum boat with a 10-horse Evinrude motor that I'd be miles away in the water. And one of the beauties of where I grew up, and I will thank, the stars that I got to grow up there, Washington State. This is where I grew up. And I'm going to take you on a little tour, on a little something that I used to do with my friends. So this is the South Puget Sound. Everything out. I don't know if you can see the cursor. Oh, you can't see the cursor. Darn it. I don't think I can draw on that either. Yeah, we'll do that the next time. Anyway, everything, all the water on the left side of this page over here. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see if this works. Okay, there we go. Everything over here is the South Puget Sound. Now, my house was right here. my mom lived. See if I can find it. Got to find the rock first. There's a rock out there. No. There it is. Well, they've already got the new house there. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Wow, they did the beach house, everything. Yeah, boy. Good thing my aunt made sure that house left the family. But anyway, so that's where I grew up. So if I wanted to hop in a boat, I could take my boat all the way out here and go to Seattle if I wanted to, which I did. But most of the time we just go play around here, cruise around behind Anderson Island, go down all the way into the South Sound and just go play out there. But what I started working at the Tacoma Narrows Airport in high school. And I'm going to take you on a little journey with me here. Let's see if this works. Got to shut this off. So I used Flight Simulator. So right there's Gig Harbor. Now, well, let me pause this real quick. So what I'm going to do is I am going to show you what I would do. I would go to the airport, rent an airplane, and my buddies and I, we'd go flying up over the Olympic Mountains. Now, the Olympic Mountains are out here. This mountain range right there. We would go, now I wouldn't fly in this particular airplane, but they didn't have the particular airplane that I flew in. It was too slow. I didn't want to take too long to fly out there. But we'd get in a Piper Warrior, which is a 4-seat. It's kind of Piper's version of the 172. I'd climb up to about 10,000 feet, circle up over the mountains, get up above, the highest peaks, and then we would come in low over. See, now we're back. Now it's like we're heading back towards Seattle. So you go out over the range, out this way, circle up this way, and then just come flying down these channels. Pull the power and just do some not dangerous. I think my boss is actually still alive, who owns the flight center at Tacoma Narrows. He'd probably file a lawsuit against me to this day. It was all safe mountain flying. I figured out, made sure the winds weren't like going in the wrong direction. But we would just pull the power and just fly down through these valleys and just cruise, looking for animals, looking for cool houses, looking for places to explore. And that's just what I would go and do for fun. Now, I used to do it by myself before I got my license. So when I was 16 years old, I got, let's see, 1 second here. When I was 16, I had my license. Sorry, I got to fix something here real quick. When I was 16, I got my pilot's license. But before then, I'd go out and solo. I would just go out. I'd have nothing to do. Go up to the airport, hang out with all the pilots and, at the flight center and rent an airplane. It was like $46 an hour to rent a plane and go fly. So going out and doing this, it was just like when I was in an airplane, I wasn't thinking about anything except flying. Nobody at the airport gave me anything about politics. Nobody at the airport ever. Like, it was just, I surrounded myself with as many people as I could, always. I loved being around people. And I think that is what we've gotten away from today. Nobody communes with anybody anymore. Nobody gets together in large groups. I mean, maybe some people do. Maybe I was a part, since I was kind of the one who was canceled. I guess I would have probably been considered the one conservative in like our larger group of friends. And But here's what I'm going to call out. I mean, again, why I'm doing this broadcast, why I'm starting this streaming show, and because this is where my truths are going to be told. You know, going through a cancellation like I went through, and if you went through something like that, look at what they did to President Trump. I mean, that was hard to watch. It was seriously hard to watch somebody deal with things that they're not guilty of. Like I was not guilty of. I was not guilty of domestic violence. I was not guilty of giving my kids' dogs away. I mean, the things that were said, or the things that get said in divorce, in estate transfers, in times where, you know, grandparents are dying and the families are vying for all the assets in the family. I mean, look, did you hear about Gene Hackman's death? What did I tell you? I told everybody, Gene Hackman's death is going to eventually turn into somebody's kids are going to get really upset about the money, and people are going to start freaking out. And it's happening. You cannot find an estate attorney who litigates in the state of Washington. Why is that? Why do we not have estate attorneys that will litigate? Probably because there's too many cases exactly like mine, where families came to the end of life for the patriarch or the matriarch or both, and it came time to divvy up assets. Well, let me tell you, let's just put it this way. I don't have a family anymore. Since my mom was taken out and removed so her title of executor could be eliminated and filled with somebody else, since there were games played with money at the end of life. I mean, there were even games played with how estates were handed out at the end of life for kind of one of my adopted set of parents that I love dearly. And all the people in that, you know, the kids in that family, after everything kind of went to shit, COVID hit, I was suddenly excommunicated from that family. Couldn't even attend the funeral. I literally felt like I was uninvited from my own parents' funeral. I know why now. I mean, it's easy to see why now. It's because they were doing things that they knew I would be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? That ain't cool. Because I think what pisses people off about me, especially around here, in my group of friends, you know, all of us that went to school together, junior high school, and then some went off to college, but I didn't. I didn't go off to college. People knew me as the guy who got kicked out of high school with 2 weeks left. Oh, well. It's not like, you know, I didn't have lots of friends, but I was that guy. But somehow I ended up making the most money at a job that probably would have been, you know, been considered one of the better jobs out of anybody. So I totally forgot about jealousy. And I'm sure people were extraordinarily jealous of what I had or what I was given the opportunity to do, which in my view, I didn't care. I was recruited into doing it. I've never really chosen to do any one thing. I've just always worked, taken an opportunity as they come. That's just how it's worked. People don't like that. Some people do believe that you should have to pay a price, that either you should get an education, or if you don't get an education, you should this, or, you know, if you don't do this, you shouldn't get this. Well, I just don't believe in that. I believe every single person that has a beating heart and a firing brain with brain cells has the same opportunity to do or achieve or set a goal or do something that anybody can. And I've always treated people the same for it and judged them by their character and how they treat people and how they communicate and how good they are at communicating. That's it. But that wasn't how it was it? No, it wasn't that way. I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. Did you? I just knew I wanted to be around decent people. People who were fun, friendly. See, Generation X, we're the way we are due to how we were raised. Our coaches were allowed to be hard on us. Our parents had no idea where we were because they were too busy doing them. It's where all the great 80s one-liners came of parenting. Stop crying or we'll give you something to cry about. You think that hurts? You should see what I did to your father when he was a kid. Just the normal trauma. From childhood, we're programmed by parents, society, our friends, the systems around us, our religions. Some parents raise their kids to be submissive, obedient, molded to fit the system. Others raise them to be confident and to fight it. We are at a crossroads like we've never been before. This division is not helping. The choice is being made right now. And we are not just spectators. We are the players in this game of history. Future isn't written yet. My vision for this broadcast was to bring more voices into the conversation, to ask hard questions, and to find out together how this plays out.
For people to take their dogs to the park. Shocking.
If you're one of those special individuals who's about finding a solution to all this, follow this and subscribe. So, let's look at it this way. I think that there's a lot of gamesmanship being played. That's what the judge told me when I went to court to defend myself against my second marriage's absolute domestic violence, take down. I mean, it was just this much short of what's going on in Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, that case you're seeing. I mean, it was obvious. They were literally trying to just ruin my reputation. And I'm totally honest. I was wrecked. I mean, I was wrecked. I could not believe that somebody who I felt that connected to and in love with and would have done anything for and protected and literally spent the proceeds of my house to try to build a business with, that because she wrecked our marriage, I get destroyed. Now look, her and her family they were from Napa, California. They were old school Democrats. Is that part of what being a Democrat is? Is that all part of it? Can somebody tell me? Because I didn't really grow up with any true Democrats in my family. I had no idea what my mom would have considered herself or what my dad would have considered him. I mean, I guess he would have considered himself a Republican, but my dad has the mentality of a 22-year-old. So I can't even use that as information. Is ruining people's reputation part of what it takes to be a Democrat? And I'm asking that question with an incredible amount of seriousness, because it seems to me that's all part of the game, because it's happening a lot. It's happened to other friends I know. I've heard of people who have committed suicide because of the abrupt, turning their backs on people just out of nowhere. I mean, it's a rough road back when you don't know what it is people are shunning you for, or casting you out, or not returning any calls, or acting funny around you like you're a cancer. Is that the point of the shun? Coming from look, I'm just asking the question. I've never been in a Democratic family. I come from a family of incredibly selfish, self-centered, narcissistic white men. But So trust me, I know white men, especially like the rich ones who play a lot of golf. Trust me when I say I know that demographic of men better than anybody you will ever know. Any person you know. I got to play golf at one of the most prestigious country clubs in the area for almost like 18 years and got to know a lot of these men, a lot of these well-respected local barons of business. Long intergenerational wealth transfers, money, just deep-rooted money in a lot of these families. I know a lot of these men. And I know some of them are really good, decent people. But there is a fair share of them that as long as they have their money and nobody tells them what to do, they're great. But if you take that away from them, they get weird. But doesn't everybody get weird? If you threaten anybody's livelihood, wouldn't you expect them to get kind of weird? I would. I totally would. I totally understand it. And I think what's happening right now, here's another thing that I think that I'd like to float as a way to identify somebody who might lean a little bit more to the conservative, maybe Republican, but somebody who might feel like they're a little bit more conservative versus more liberal. And this is just something I've noticed. The people that I have figured out as of late, as of the last 2 or 3 years, what everybody's political affiliations are based upon who responds, who I still like have a friendship with or a connection with, because, well, you know what I'm talking about. So now that I've been able to place kind of some of the, must be a Democrat. Must be a Democrat. Didn't know. Now I can kind of go back and take my history with those people and the interactions that we've had and kind of determine, that's a common trait. A common trait of a person who is conservative. If you're playing a golf match or a game of pool or a game of Uno, I don't care what it is. If you look like you're letting somebody win, like, you know how you let a kid win a game of cards every once in a while just to, make them feel better? Well, a kid will be like, yeah, sweet, I won. But if you let a conservative win, or if you expose that you're letting them win, they'll get upset with you. They will question what the fuck you even played the game for if you're going to let them win. I've had people do that. My father-in-law, the one who gave me the great job, I was a good pool player when I met him, and he was a great pool player too, but I just was a better pool player. Nobody in the family had ever beaten him, ever. Like ever, ever, ever. So I beat him all the time. And he liked that. He loved the fact that there was competition in the house because that means he could get better. But there was this one game where he was getting pretty heated and he thought I let him win. He almost kicked me out of the house. That trait among conservatives, which I consider to be, I think it's just, it's just more of like an honorable trait. It's you have honor. You don't want to win because you're cheating. And then, like my brother-in-law specifically, he invited me to a golf tournament where he was a new member at a club and had some friends. And when I go to a golf tournament, I've always treated the game of golf like you follow the rules, you count your strokes, you don't cheat. That's how men do it. That's how it's done. So we were out playing. It wasn't even it wasn't technically part of the tournament, but basically we got put into a situation where the other team hit my ball. So therefore, when I went up to go hit my shot, I looked and I went, ooh, that's not my ball. I think you hit mine.
So I got my ball back, placed it as close, did my thing. They wanted just to pretend like it didn't happen and just cheat. Well, I said, no, we can't do that. This is part of the event. We got to turn in our scores. It's only 2 shots, guys. You'll get it back. And they all looked at me like I was the devil. And that's when, I didn't know that was the deal. But now that I look at it, anybody I've run across in my life who has tried to find a way to cheat or pull a fast one to win or whatever, the majority of those have turned out to be Democrats. So is cheating more a Democratic value and playing fair more a conservative or Republican value? That's the question I'm going to pose. And I'd like to put that out there. And we'll talk about that in another broadcast, because I think we need to address it. Everybody, I think maybe bends the rules a little bit here and there, cheats on a test, sure. But will you cheat to win? And then tomorrow's the weekend, so probably Monday. We might do a little bit over the weekend, but next thing I want to talk about is what we are going to do when things really start to melt down and how we're going to go about talking about it. You can't have regrets for the bad things that happen to you. They're just as important as the good things. I've learned way more from my mistakes than I have from my success. I said Hollywood would die the day I pulled out of town.
We're good. You got your seatbelt on? Seatbelt.
We're going to find out just how mentally healthy this country is over these next few years, maybe a few months. Shit. I just don't think there's time in life to hold a grudge. You got to get through it, move through it, figure it out, look for something fun to do. But don't ever miss an opportunity to call someone out for being a dick. I wasn't the one who started this bullshit, but I will do what it takes to end it.